Welcome to Backstage Astrology, where we take off the expert mask and get real. My name is Mayra. I'm an astrology enthusiast and also a creative advisor. I've been helping astrologers with their digital stuff for a few years, and the more I get to see them behind the scenes, the more I realize that also our astrologers go through a lot of big challenges. They have big fears, big insecurities. I always wonder what it was to be an astrologer, how their lives look like really behind all the cosmic wisdom. I always had this question of like, how is your life really? And also obviously if you can make a living out of astrology. So in this new series, I'm trying to talk to astrologers and to really understand what goes on with their lives behind the scenes, all the challenges they have faced as astrologers before and actually, because obviously before, maybe if you would tell someone you were an astrologer, they would label you in a certain or specific way. This is a story that I keep hearing from them. The point of this new series, I want to talk about their doubts, their fears, their breakthroughs, all the behind the scenes moments, obviously their personal lives if they are willing to share. This is the goal of this podcast, is to create genuine connections with astrologers as human beings, to get to know them better. And I hope you enjoy this series. Let's see how many astrologers I can get here. And if you're an astrologer and you have a story you want to share with others, please just send me an email. I will leave all the details below. We're going to talk about the personal struggles. And in the second part, we kind of dive into the transits and insights they are passionate about, the ones that they fear the most, the ones that they find most inspiring. Let's see how this goes. And if you really like these conversations, please like the video, help me a little bit with the algorithm to get the message across. And obviously I know this is for a very specific niche. I'm guessing you're here because you love astrology and you admire astrologers as well. And of course, let's get real. Let's get real with the astrologers. Let's try to uncover what happens behind the scenes. So thank you for being here, and I really hope you enjoy each episode.
So living in London, everything's very cramped. So to find one thing, I got to move five other things. So I have Mirror, I have growing pains, and then Zeus.
Oh, this is the one like coming up, right? The one yeah.
This is the final edits today. So I just got the final PDF.
Oh my
Steve Judd
God,
has
how
done
exciting.
I
Yeah.
know. Steve Judd has done the
Forward.
forward. Yep.
Yeah.
And um transiting Jupiter is on my Venus today.
When I met you in the conference, and when you actually you told us that the planet to look at for education is Jupiter. I
Hmm.
was like, what is she saying? Like, I was always told that it was Mercury because, learning, communication. So when you said that, because for me it was
Fantastic.
like, how? Like, and then it's like, of course, when you actually started explaining it, I was like, it makes all the sense in the world. So that actually, blew my mind. I'm honored to be here with Alex Trenoweth. She's an author, teacher, and award-winning astrologer who blends the wisdom of astrology with the art of teaching. Like, she's an actual teacher, so she knows what she's talking about. And now, with her pioneering research into the impact of planetary cycles on childhood development and education, she has brought astrology not only into the classrooms, but also in conferences worldwide, empowering educators, parents, and astrologers, and people like me that don't even have children. But I'm so interested in your work. So, Alex, welcome. And thank you
Thank
so
you.
much for being here. Please tell us a little bit more about you. Like, I mean, I already introduced you, but how would you introduce yourself? What do you want people to know about you?
Well, I'm a Gemini rising, so it depends on who I'm talking to, which side of me you get. But I'm kind of a jack of all trades, master of none, really, except for astrology and teaching, maybe. But I dabble in a lot of different things. I'm a musician. I play the trumpet semi-professionally. I love to read. I love literature, and I'm always reading something. And I love to write. But see, I like to play games. So I'm kind of somebody who can have a conversation with anybody, and I'm genuinely curious about people and about situations and places, and I love to learn.
Yeah, I have to tell the whoever is watching this that I met her at Shifts Happen at the conference that organized by Steve Judd. And she just came into the room and she sat with us and she was like drinking wine with us and we were talking
I wasn't
about
drinking wine. I don't drink wine.
okay. I
I
was
don't drink.
drinking wine. Yeah, we were having such a good time and you were also talking about making London an astrological city. So just randomly, can you explain the people what you mean by that?
Well, I mean, London is an astrological city. There is so much here. So one of the things I wanted people to experience, we started off at St. Paul's, which of course was where Charles and Diana got married. One of the most ill-fated marriages in history. They got married on an eclipse, and any astrologer would have advised them not to get married on an eclipse. But anyway,
Oh,
and also Meghan Markle was born only a couple weeks after that.
uh-huh.
And then I wanted to take you to the Bracken House to see our version of the astronomical clock, which is with
Mhm.
Winston Churchill's old offices. Then we went down to Mysterian Museum, and the Mysterian Museum is an old temple, Mistress Museum, that was they were excavating to build some the tubes, extend the tubes, and they found this old temple. So it's free to go inside. And I thought, wouldn't it be great if I could just get all these astrologers in and we could explain precession of the equinoxes better than their guides at the museum. And then we did something else. Oh, we went to see Boudica, the statue of Boudica and Westminster. But I just wanted to like claim London as, a really important area for astrologers. Astrologers come, to London
Mhm.
and they don't know what to look for. But I'm saying all these great things you can see. So London is or was, or well, I want it to be, a hub for astrology. People who are interested in looking at the city as this astrological hub. It is the financial district, of course, of
Mhm.
England, with Fleet Street and you see Mercury everywhere. Mercantile. You see the god of commerce all over the place in London. So I wanted everybody to experience that.
That's brilliant. Alex, so tell us, when did you first realize that astrology would play a central role in your life? I mean, because you're a teacher and a daughter and a mom and a sister, but what happened?
Well, I mean, my mom was reading the must have been a Sunday supplement. I was maybe preteen, and she was reading the descriptions of Cancer. I'm a Cancer sun. My birthday's the 20th of July. And she was saying, oh, Cancers are home loving and shy. And I was like, I guess astrology doesn't make sense. And then she's a Sagittarius. And of course, they're exuberant and enthusiastic. And I was like, wow, I think astrology really is wrong. So if anybody asked me what my sun sign was, I'd always say on the cusp of Leo. I'd never own up to being a Cancer. And then in my final year of university, I had a friend who asked me if I was a Leo. And just to be contrary, I said, no, I'm a Cancer. And then she said, I bet you must have the moon in Leo. And I had never heard of such a thing. And so she did a rudimentary chart for me, and it just looked to me like some sort of magical incantation. And I was really drawn into the symbology and, the whole entire thing that she was reading in ephemeris and plotting these planets in. And she finished what she was doing, and she says, yep, there's a moon in Leo. And if I've done my calculations correct, you're a Gemini rising, which makes your Mercury in Leo your ruling planet. And I was mind blown. No wonder I felt like a Leo.
Wow. And no wonder why your conferences are like so fun and entertaining. I mean, beyond the wisdom that you already provide us, but it's really like, I mean, if there were popcorn in the conference, I would have like probably bought some. It's really good, entertaining. We had a laugh there, every 5 minutes with you, and at the same time you were teaching us about these planetary cycles. But what were the challenges, the early challenges when you decided I'm gonna be an astrologer or I wanna spend part of my life doing this? What were the challenges you faced integrating astrology into your profession as a teacher? Because you're a teacher, right? Like,
Yeah.
mm,
Well, I mean, astrology became, I mean, I knew I wanted to be a teacher since I was a child, but, I was trying to do astrology classes when I first came to England because I'm actually from Detroit, Michigan. So I came to England, and I mean, I really made things difficult for myself because I had a family when I started studying astrology in earnest. And in fact, I had scheduled myself to have my first astrology exam when my daughter was due. I thought that she was going to be born late, like my sons were born late, but she actually came early. So she was born 2 weeks
Oh
before the
my God.
exam started. So there I was breastfeeding a baby and trying to do my astrology exams. And then, of course, I kept piling pressure on myself, doing teachers training and then doing the MA in cultural astronomy and astrology and raising a young family. So I didn't make things easy for myself, but I did persevere. I worked with the Faculty of Astrological Studies, and I've
Mhm.
worked with a lot of different schools. And I'm going to stick my neck out here and I'm going to say the faculty is the best astrology school because with them I got to go to Oxford Summer School, and I just really feel that I because I've looked at other schools and worked with Kepler College and a few others, I really do think the faculty is the best. And I stuck it out, even though I had some setbacks. I stuck with it, and I'm really a very very proud diploma holder.
Yeah, yeah, I know you are. Yeah, similar as Nick and Steve. You guys met there or yeah,
No, no,
during the.
yeah, Steve and I, we'd known each other before. We did the MA together, along with Nick Campion,
Ah,
who was teaching. But we had met at an astrology camp, like an astrology festival. And because my children were young and because we were going to a lot of festivals, we kept running into Steve. So Steve,
ah,
is a very old friend of mine. And
wow.
I lost contact with him for a long time. And then really with the past 5 or 6 years, we got back into contact. And it was, I have to thank Pam Gregory. She did an interview with me and we got like 40,000 views. I mean, 40,000 views. And then
That's
people started talking to Steve about me. And so Steve said, let's do some work together. So that's how that connection happened.
oh, okay. Okay, great. So when you I mean you are a teacher and then you have your astrology going on, it's a good Gemini doing two or five things
Yep.
probably at the same time. Um, so how did you manage, because I understand you were trying to pull astrology into your education thing, but you also face some challenges there. What was the
Yeah.
major
Well, I
setback?
mean, it started off I mean, my first day being permanently employed, my given name is not Alex. I have a legal name. And the head teacher, I asked the head teacher, do you mind calling me Alex? And she said, well, let me think about it. And so she must have Googled me. And then I was pulled into her office, and because there was a Christian academy, she made it clear that if anyone complained about me being an astrologer, I could be dismissed for gross misconduct for bringing the academy into disrepute. Which my first day of on the job, was enough to scare me into shutting up.
Mhm.
But banning me from doing something is a pretty sure way I'm going to squeeze it in somehow. So I started off with sun signs, which was a disaster. I tried to do my seating plan according to sun signs. I had all the fire signs in one row, all the earth signs in the next, the air signs and
No
the water
way.
signs. And of course, what happened was the fire signs took over, being loud and boisterous. The air signs shouted over the head of the earth signs. The earth signs just kind of sat there in silent shock, and the poor water signs started hugging themselves and rocking to self-soothe. So it was like, it's not only, too hard to remember everybody's sun sign, although I probably could get used to it, like getting to know names.
Hmm.
It's impractical, really. But then
Hmm.
one day when I was realizing, I was thinking, oh, teaching isn't for me. It's too hard. I got too much going on and I was getting ready to quit. But I remember I was teaching Macbeth and as an English teacher, and I turned around and looked at them and I thought, huh, you guys all have the same Jupiter sign. And then I have my Jupiter sign, my Saturn sign, you all have the same Saturn sign, and we're all playing off against each other. And that's when I realized, wow, I think there's something here because we teach children by year groups. So I did
Wow.
a Jupiter cycle of observation. Then I wrote Growing Pains,
Yes.
and
Tell
then
her, yeah.
another Jupiter cycle has passed, and then I've written the follow up, which is Zeus on the Loose. But I'm a different teacher than I was back then. Now,
Right.
if a teacher pulled me into the office and said, if anybody wants to fire you for being an astrologer, I would immediately jump on the bandwagon of religious persecution. And I'm having my arguments ready, and I kind of wish somebody would challenge me, but nobody has. But I do use
Interesting.
astrology differently. I mean, I'm not about sun signs. I'm not against sun signs. I just don't use them in learning because I don't think it's relevant. I say the inner planets are to do with a child's personality, and that's not my responsibility. That's mom and dad's responsibility. My job is to teach, and that's Jupiter and Saturn.
But when you were, called by your this manager, director, okay, but what about
Head
your
teacher.
peers, your colleagues? Were they interested? The other teachers, were they asking you questions about, hey, Alex, what do you think? Or not really? Were they
Well,
supportive or?
I mean, I think one of the most frustrating things about being an astrologer is people want to treat you like you're stupid. Like,
Oh,
oh, you believe in that superstitious or that
mm,
medieval
right.
rubbish. They want to act like you don't know what you're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
So I had to deal a lot with that. And we had a speaker come to do our teachers training, and we had been giving his book to read over the summer. It's called Bounced, and he was advocating the 10,000 hour rule. If you master something, you must have spent 10,000 hours practicing
Mm-hmm.
it. Well, he was a professional ping pong player. And so he's talking, and I'm listening to him talk about 10,000 hour rule. And I'm like, wow, I got 10,000 hours as a teacher easily, 10,000 hours as a trumpet player, and 10,000 hours as an astrologer. And just as I was starting to feel really good about it, he suddenly throws in, astrology. I don't understand why astrologers persist in their study of astrology when it's been proven wrong. So then all my colleagues, of course, turn around and look at me, and the look that they give you, kind of like, what are you
Let's
going
see
to say
how
about
you.
that? And I thought, bite your tongue, just take it on the chin. But then I got really annoyed, and I just thought, hold on, you don't know a thing about astrology. So I let him have it, and I told him that as a non-ping pong player, I would not even question whether or not ping pong was actually a sport, let alone a sport for a man. And that shut him up pretty quickly, and he actually apologized. And so that's kind of the attitude I have to anybody
Hmm.
who wants to argue with me, whether or not astrology is true. Well, how much have you studied? I haven't seen you at any conferences. I haven't seen you in classes, and
Mhm.
I don't know your name, in the astrology circles. So I guess you don't know much about astrology. That's my take.
Wow.
Not my
And
take.
how, because now it's shifting. Now, astrology became popular again, and now I guess they are treating you differently now. Or how do you feel about, that change from where you started up until now? Do you feel different, people, how they treat you, or?
Well, I think the astrology world, excuse me, has changed in that we used to be 10 years ago the fashion was to go to astrology conferences and to give lectures, but now it's all changing. Now we're shifted onto social media,
Right,
and
right.
like a lot of other topics, astrology doesn't really get you can't really get in depth on social media, kind of like politics. So I see a lot of arguments going on,
Mhm.
about things that I don't think matter. What matters is what you practice. And in fact, that's what I say to people. I don't believe in astrology either. I practice it.
Wow.
And
Mhm.
yeah, go ahead.
No, I was just thinking, you must have a million experiences and accommodating the children according to their moon or Mars. Is there any experiment you did that failed or that that you can laugh at right now? When you were
Well,
trying
the
the
sun
sun
signs,
signs, yeah.
but I never really looked at, I mean, once I did the sun sign, and that was a failure. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, obviously we have their dates of birth. So I mean, I can't help, if someone's got a birthday in
Of course.
October and I see the date of birth, of course I know they're either a Libra or Scorpio. I can't help it. And same with knowing their Jupiter sign. I know their Jupiter sign because their size, right? Because we teach it by year group. But I try not to, well, I don't let my judgment cloud, how I teach, other than it advises me, gives me ideas, for how I can get a lesson across to
Mhm.
different year groups, and gives me ideas. It helps me generate ideas, but it doesn't mean that, just because you've got a group of Jupiter, I don't know, Jupiter in Virgo students who might be really good at analyzing things, it doesn't mean that, I'm going to stop them from learning things about law or culture or whatever else. I just helps me generate ideas, and also maybe helps me to understand their weaknesses a bit better, so I can get
Mhm.
more people in to help me on the difficult bits that they have to master. Because that's one thing about the national curriculum here in England, is that it touches all the bases. Whether we want,
Mhm.
whether we agree with it or not, there's lots of different skills that children can learn. But I think
Mhm.
astrology can really, where I think it really comes into its own in teaching, is that it helps simplify a teacher's workload, because
Mhm.
teachers, they are overworked. It's ridiculous. how much a teacher actually has to do, has to get on with. And it's quite an unfair situation. I was at a an event yesterday, where we were treated as guests like kings and queens. We had 3 meals, I mean, not just meals, but really lovely, lovely meals. And I just thought to myself at the end of the day, this wasn't a school event, this was a corporate event. I just thought, gosh, I am in the wrong profession, because these guys get paid well, they get fed well, they get this beautiful building to work in, and here we are, bringing in our sweaty peanut butter sandwiches.
So, oh my God, Alex, so tell us why Jupiter? Why Jupiter? I think people are just as curious as I was before finding out your work.
Yeah, so I mean, a lot of astrologers want to argue with me about, oh, it's Mercury, the planet of learning, but I don't think it is. Mercury was a messenger god, so he brought the messages from various places and he delivered them. He didn't, you know, he was a trickster, but he didn't, he just repeated what he heard. So I think Mercury is to do with rote learning.
Mhm.
A teacher holds up the letter T, what does the sound make? T, 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 T. That's rote learning. But Jupiter learning is taking those sounds to form words, to form the blends of different sounds, like
Mhm.
the TH sound in English, for example, to form sentences, to form paragraphs, to form essays. The Jupiter, it takes those little bits of information and expands it and it makes it into something really magnificent. People's accents is quite interesting. People say to me, because I was born in America, you know, you don't sound British. Well, my Mercury is in a fixed sign, so
Ah.
my accent isn't going to change because I learned those sounds when I was young, and they just stayed with me. Whereas I think someone with a mutable Mercury, their accents might be a little bit more changeable. But
Oh,
I'm talking about those
wow.
little small little words, the little movements that we make with our tongue and our jaw to
Uh-huh.
form the sounds that we make to speak.
How interesting. I have Mercury and Jupiter in Aquarius. So maybe my accent will
Also
never
fixed.
change.
I don't think so. Not in a fixed sign.
Let's see. So, Alex, going back to the challenges you faced, what is one fear or limiting belief you've had to overcome as an astrologer in the public eye?
Well, as I said, I find it really difficult to cope with when people um, make assumptions. They think that I'm a
Mhm.
fortune teller. That's
Mhm.
frustrating. I hear like really stupid comments that people make. Well, you should have seen that coming. You're an astrologer. It's like, well, that's
Mm.
not how it works,
Right.
So that's frustrating. And just the general prejudice. Nearly every astrologer I've ever known is a total book hoarder. They
Mhm.
read everything and they're highly educated usually. And they're curious about the world. And there is something about an astrologer because they've overcome all that prejudice, because they're naturally curious, that I
Yes.
think that they tend to be really intelligent people and they're invested in their education as well. They're high up. Case in point, Nick Campion, Dr. Nick Campion, one of the probably one of the most gifted historians we have. He knows his stuff. Patrick Curry, our late great Jeffrey
Mhm.
Cornelius. All these people are really highly educated.
Yeah, and I was impressed also talking about education and the amount of research you've done. I mean, when I saw your work, I'm like, she's an academic astrologer. I mean, there's no other way to put it, because you've done your research, you've compared, you actually work with the kids, you watch them every day. So, I mean, I think this is, sometimes what people don't understand, that astrology goes beyond the crystal ball, and that prejudice, as you said. So. So tell us more a little bit about, I mean, you're traveling, you're teaching, you're a mom, you're a wife. How do you stay grounded and energized behind the scenes? Because, I mean, there's a lot going on, I guess. How does your agenda look today?
I'm not a wife.
Okay. I will edit that
um,
part.
yeah. Oh no, it's okay. It's okay. Let me know. Let everyone know I'm single.
Okay.
So how do I fit it in? I mean, I once heard an interview with Barbara Streisand, and
Mhm.
the interviewer said, how do you hold a note for so long? And her answer was, because I want to. And I think that's the answer I have when someone says, how do you manage so much? Well, I am one of the most time efficient people. I mean, I know exactly what I need to do. I have set little goals for myself, but I'm just time efficient, and I think I can make things look a lot easier than what they are because people will say to me, "Oh, you're so lucky." It's like, lucky? Are you kidding? Do you know how hard I work? So that's another thing that really irritates me. People think
Mhm.
that things just fall into my lap, but when actually, I put a lot of effort into making some of these things happen. Um, yeah, so I think those are my challenges, but because I understand myself, I know exactly what I need to do. I don't have any planets on Earth. So, yep, I have to make lists. I have to
Wow.
set myself time goals, and I just have to get cracking down with them.
So you talk about the Jupiter-Saturn cycle, which is very important. How has it been for yourself to work with that cycle? What are the major challenges? I don't know where they are, but maybe you want to share that. I don't know.
So, I just had my second Saturn return, the first hit.
That's true.
So I think your first Saturn return is always quite challenging because it's your first Saturn return. Well, this time I saw it coming. And so I knew that I knew it was going to have it in May. And so the Steve Judd event course happened in May. Then I went to Portugal and I had I don't know if you saw on social media, but I had the Saturn cake and
Yes. Yeah,
I made
yeah.
everybody sing to
Amazing.
me because I wanted it to be a celebration. It's not just about getting old, it's about really looking back on your accomplishments, which is what, this summer for me is about. Looking back and saying, I'm a truck driver's daughter, who expected me to do all these things? And then, looking ahead, to the future, which, none of us are guaranteed a long future, but it's being proud and pleased with what you've done with your life, that I wanted to have out of my Saturn return. And I think it's better the second Saturn return than the first Saturn return. It's a bit of a challenge.
That's really cool. And I understand from previous interviews because I watched you. You have Jupiter in Cancer,
I
and
do
now
on its
we
exalted degree.
and now Jupiter is entering Cancer. You had your Saturn return. How do you feel about this?
So I fixed it so that my next Jupiter return, which is in August, coincides with my release of my book, Zeus on the Loose, which is going to happen at Waterstones, which is a main bookseller. And it's unheard of for an astrology book to be launched at a major bookseller. Usually it's at Watkins or Treadwell's or maybe the astrology shop, a specialized esoteric shop. But Waterstones is the big one. So I'm
Wow.
hoping that this will open the door for more really quality astrology because the books in Waterstones are not very good. They're the astrology books are not very good. They're
Hmm.
more for
Like
sun signs
cookbooks
and
or
yeah. And I
mm.
got to apologize. My green screen's playing up a bit back
Oh,
here.
don't worry, I can cut it. It's
The
okay.
wind is
I
blowing it.
didn't even notice. No, it's okay, don't worry.
Okay, okay.
So that's funny, the water stones, because Jupiter in Cancer, like water, and then the Saturn
Yep.
returns stones, and I was like, what's
Stones.
going on? Okay, so Alex, did you ever doubted astrology at some point? Like you said, okay, you know what, this stuff is not working. What kept you going? Was there a moment
I
where
I don't get fed up with astrology. I occasionally get fed up with astrologers.
uh-huh.
I get tired of the ego and the competition that goes on between astrologers
Yeah,
and I think a lot of astrologers struggle to find their niche, what they're good at. And whereas I always knew what my niche was
right.
because I had Jupiter. I knew that as long as I stayed with children and families with my Jupiter the way that it is, that I would be okay as an astrologer. And in fact, I would tell astrologers, hey, look at your Jupiter sign to work out, where your teaching is, where you can contribute to the
Wow.
astrology world instead of, trying to compete with other people. Um,
It was pretty clear for you because you had that strength already of being in the
I
system,
just
in the
knew it.
education system. Okay,
Yeah.
that's great. So, do you think that astrology can be used ethically in educational settings? And what are the boundaries or guidelines you would suggest?
That's a really good question and something that, I'll try to answer fully. First of all, I mean, as I said, as an astrologer, it isn't my place to judge somebody based on their Jupiter sign or on their chart. My job is an educator, and my job is to hold doors open and to make sure my students are safe. So that's where my boundaries are, first an educator.
Mm,
And my job is not to change a child's personality. Like I said, that's the parent's job.
mhm,
But I need to make sure that I understand how my children learn. Jupiter helps me, but it doesn't dictate to me.
mhm,
Now I have met astrologers who have said to me, I can read a child's chart because, I'm this wonderful astrologer. And I always bring it back to this thing about child protection. To work with children in a classroom, I have to have police clearance. I have to have the right amount of experience. And every single teacher is trained in child protection, what to do, if a child discloses something to you. Whereas most astrologers do not have that training. And so, I think it's not so much about being worried about what an astrologer can do ethically with astrology and education. It's the other way around, what
mhm.
astrologers can do in regards to working with children. So if you're an astrologer and you're listening to me and you're reading children's charts, you really need to stop and, do some child safeguarding training, at least get some police protection, and never, ever under any circumstances, allow yourself to be one-to-one alone with the child. Always have the parents there.
Oh,
And you're absolutely correct. They won't disclose to you. You don't want them to disclose to you, because what are you going to do if you have a self-harmer in front of you? Really, you're not trained to deal with them. What are you going to do? A teacher will know what to do. Um, you
wow.
know,
I never
but
thought
an
about it. Yeah.
astrologer won't. What are you going to do if you got a 14-year-old girl who's pregnant? And then what if she's pregnant by her older brother?
Oh
These
my.
things happen. And, what is an astrologer going to do? You know, um, because like I say, they're not trained. And as I said, these things happen, unfortunately, quite regularly in the school system. So they're not like isolated cases. Nobody comes to an astrologer because everything is all wonderful. They come
Mm,
to you because they have a problem and they need help resolving that problem. And I always say too, let's say this child, this 14-year-old child who's pregnant by her older brother, begs you not to tell anybody, and you, as an astrologer, feel that you are bound by confidentiality because most astrologers, have a confidentiality agreement, and you feel bound by that, and you promise confidentiality. Well, then it all blows up because, of course, a pregnancy is going to continue or not, but someone's going to find out about it. And the astrologer who heard that disclosure is going to be held responsible for the results. Now, if the parent is there in the consultation, which is what I say should always happen, the parent is responsible. But even in that case, the astrologer still has to decide whether or not that parent is competent enough to handle that problem. And this is where schools are very beneficial. So a teacher could listen to that problem, assure the child and the parent that something will be done, and they could take that problem and hand it to the proper people who can deal with it appropriately. It's not about passing on a problem, it's about making sure that the right person is dealing with it, that the astrologer isn't taking it on board themselves, because that's absolutely the
wow.
incorrect thing to do. They have to be able to know what to do, and not just keep secrets. But
Wow,
most astrologers
it's
don't
so
know that.
interesting. Yeah. So in your ideal world vision, how would you teach others, to implement astrology in educating their children or at schools? Do you have a vision about it? Actually, I wanted to ask you about your school because I understand you have an astrology school which focuses on looking at the charts of children ethically. So
Yes.
please, Alex, tell us more about this now that we're talking about
Sure.
this
So, I mean,
topic.
I do think that astrology has a very powerful role in education and in raising children, but it does have to be done properly, and it has to be done, within the child safeguarding and child protection guidelines. So, what I do is basically I take astrologers through the child safeguarding
Mhm.
procedures, hopefully alarm them well enough that they understand, okay, I can't see children one to one, And they know that, okay, if I'm going to work with children's charts, I need police protection. I need to be, sorry, not police protection, but police clearance,
Mhm.
because teachers have to prove that they haven't committed any crime. And so astrologers, if they're going to work with children's charts, they need to do the same thing. And also, looking at Jupiter and Saturn, and maybe a little bit of Uranus
Mhm.
only, leaving the inner planets to the parents, the personality. I may mention to a parent, your child has, moon in Virgo, just as a point of interest, but I'm not going to assign like a future career to them any more than I would do the same thing with Jupiter and Virgo either. I wouldn't say, oh, your child's going to be a great doctor. I wouldn't do that. So you have to be very careful that we don't create helicopter parenting.
Oh,
You
what do
know,
you mean by that? Sorry.
so it's when they also call it tiger parenting, is when you say something like, oh, your child is very good at analyzing this, that, or the other thing. They might be interested in medicine. Well, all the parent hears is doctor, doctor, doctor. So they start forcing the child to do like pre-med, advanced pre-med classes, make them do their homework, 8 hours, as soon as they come home from school. They got music lessons, French lessons, Japanese lessons, got all these different lessons and extracurricular activities because they think their child's going to be a doctor and needs these extracurricular things to do. So, I'm also about live and let live, let a child explore. You can explore aimlessly and still get a lot out of that exploration.
So interesting. You also mentioned that you all would look at Uranus a little bit.
Mhm.
Why? Just give us a hint, because I know maybe in your book you cover that topic. I'm not sure.
Sure. So when you have your first Jupiter return at around the age of 11 to 12, 11 years, 8 to 9 months is the average. Um, so after that point, about 2 years later, Jupiter keeps going around the zodiac. It'll reach transiting Jupiter sextile, its natal position,
Mhm.
at the same time that Uranus will have its first sextile to its natal position.
Mm.
And it's the first Ptolemaic aspect from an outer planet at the same time. So you put those keywords together, Jupiter, big, expansive,
Mhm.
and Uranus, rebellion,
Mhm.
you get the words big rebellion. And that happens around the age of 13.
Mm.
And
Okay.
I know from, other research that I've done that the age of 13 is the year group no teacher wants to teach because children are very, very difficult at that age. They stop listening to their parents and teachers and start listening to their peers. So the other thing I tell parents is, have that talk about, sex and your expectations around family guidelines before they turn 13, because it's better that they hear from you than they hear misinformation from their friends. So I think it's really important that parents set those boundaries and are able to build trust, keep those lines of communication open, build trust, um, grant privileges when the trust has been built, because children of that age really want to have their independence, but they're still dependent on their parents for money, for emotional guidance, for the roof over their head. They're not ready for independence yet. So, don't let your children just grow out of it. They still need your support, even though that separation is a natural part of growing up. Children still need you. And I will call children until they are 18. I don't care if they're 17 years, 364 days. In my head, you're still a child, and they're a child by law. And I've heard all the arguments. Oh, this is a really mature 16-year-old, or this person goes on tours all over the place and they do this, that, and the other. No, sorry, they're still a child. If they go into a pub and they try to order a drink and they get served and they're not 18, they've broken the law, or the landlord has broken the law. So it's the same thing in
Oh, yeah.
astrology. An adult is an adult. 18 is 18.
Okay, interesting. See, you were also saying in one of your interviews, because there were two things that stuck in my head from one of your interviews is to talk to your children about money.
Yeah.
That's very important. Can you elaborate on that? Because I really like what you mentioned, but I can't remember by heart exactly.
Well, I mean, I think that parents don't talk about money. We try to keep it from our children. How much electricity is, how much we don't talk about our salaries. in general. I
Mhm.
mean, we don't talk about, income or, but yet children are sensitive. They pick up on your financial anxiety. Why can't you have those expensive pair of trainers? All my friends have them. Well, actually, they don't all have them. And, if you want to earn your trainers, this is the amount of money you need to earn in order to have these trainers. So I think what parents, I don't like to use the word should, but what my
You
ideal
would suggest.
scenario would be is that, let them know how much that costs in the real world. Let them know that sometimes there is a choice between paying the electricity bill or buying a new pair of trainers. And, which are you going to do? And, what skills. So I think talking about money is equally important.
Interesting, thank you. Is there any current transit, personal or not, that you find either encouraging or intimidating, and why?
Well, currently I have transiting Jupiter on my natal Venus in Gemini. And so I've just been like really like I've had so many interviews and my book is
Oh,
coming out and just let me Zeus on the loose.
yeah, tell us more about it if you want.
Transiting Jupiter on my natal Venus and Zeus on the loose has been my baby for the past 12 years. It's been in
12
my
years.
it's been in my head, but I actually physically wrote it in about a month. But like I say, it's because I had the title already in my head. I had, the layout in my head. It was just a matter of sitting down and getting it done. So, like I said before, I understand what I need to do. It's just a matter of getting it done. So I really did teach all day, come home, write my 2,000 words for a month to finish the first draft. I got to 75,000 words, cut down a little bit from there, but that's how I approach this book. Get it written down, stop messing around. And
So
yeah,
that's your creative process, because I wanted to ask you
yeah.
then about, your creative
I
process is
can
just like sit and do it.
I can be a bit obsessed. Yeah. I have Neptune in Scorpio in the sixth house. And I can be
Ah,
really, really driven to the point that, I if I'm writing on a Saturday, I can sit down with a cup of tea and pick up my cup of tea 4 hours later and it's cold. Realize half the day has gone by. I haven't even eaten breakfast. That's the kind of thing I can get into. So the other thing that I have is I have, of course, a timer um, that will go off. A good writing sessions for me, I think it's 2 hours. And I try to get
wow.
2,000 words done in 2 hours. Maybe I might need a bit more time, but I try not to, because I can lose track of time. I try not to let that happen.
Wow, so you're making a very good use of that Neptune in the sixth house, because, I listen to many astrologers, and some of them, they always paint Neptune like as the bad guy, like lazy,
Mm.
confusion, blah, blah, blah. So when I hear this is very inspiring, because actually, see what you can accomplish with that.
Yeah, I mean, there might be other things in my chart that drive me. I have Venus square Saturn. You
Mhm.
can never love me enough. I can never do enough. I have Mars square Saturn as well. You can never love me enough. I can never do enough. So I have that driving me too, driving me
Mhm.
crazy. But I think my Neptune, I think because I understand my Neptune, um,
Mhm, exactly.
probably a little ADHD involved in there in the focus thing. But I understand what I need to do and how I like to work and what works for me. I could tell you what doesn't work for me is working in short spurts.
No, really.
15 minutes, 15 minutes, have a break. That will not work because in 15 minutes, oh, I'll be playing games. I'll be, looking at YouTube. I'll be distracted. I won't get it done. But if you give me that 2 hours, I can get things
I
a lot done in that 2 hours.
see. Interesting. So, coming back to the personal kind of story, if you could give one piece of advice to your younger astrologer self, what would it be?
I I am really pleased with I always say to people, be the kind of person that your younger self would admire.
Oh,
And, I hate to, I don't want to sound like I'm boasting, but I am the kind of person I think my younger self would admire. I think,
wow.
I've read a lot, I've done a lot, I've traveled a lot. I have, many friends from many different walks of life. I think that I have achieved that. I have three brilliant children or 50,000 if you count my students that I'm, proud
Yes.
of in so many different ways. So I think my advice is be the person that your younger self would have admired.
Amazing, amazing. And lastly, I think I just wanted to ask you. I mean, I think it's pretty obvious for you, but probably for many it's not. If you've seen astrology improve teacher-student relationships or classroom dynamics, could you tell us, I mean, if it really has improved the
Um,
teacher-student relationships or
yeah,
because also, yeah.
I think that there's an expression, a happy teacher changes the world. And I think more
Mm,
should be done to make teachers happy. And I see so much on social media that parents are blaming teachers, for all the problems in the world. And it's just like you don't have any idea what teachers do for you. It's not just free babysitting, the things that we do for our children. And we don't see our children as just being these, I don't know, inanimate objects. We love our children with boundaries, of course, but there is so much that we do for our children. And I love it when parents say to me, I pay taxes, therefore I pay your salary. Because I love it. I'll clap back with, yeah, I'm a taxpayer too. Where are my extra teaching assistants for all these children with individual education plans? Okay. Where are my toilet breaks? All these children want to go to the toilet whenever they feel like it. Where are my toilet breaks? If I can only go to the loo at break and lunchtime, where's my extra pair of hands that will help me when I have all this marking to do, So I'm a taxpayer too. But I really think, and I'm hoping that with Jupiter in Cancer, that teachers and nurses and anybody in a female-dominated profession can start to realize, hey, why are they paying a football player, a male football player, all this money for kicking a ball from one end of the field to another? But somebody who is teaching your child, 6, 7 hours a day, um, you know, giving them all this effort and all this hard work, or the woman who is, wiping your mother's backside because she's sick in hospital and you don't want to do that. Why are these women being treated so badly, being paid poorly, being looked down upon, and everyone thinks, oh, they're women, they're naturally good at it. That drives me crazy. So I'm hoping that, the more we talk about equity, the more we can make an improvement for nurses and teachers to actually drive society.
wow, amazing, Alex. And touching on that point, is there anything now that we are here, we have a few minutes, is there any advice or anything you want parents to know about your work as a teacher, besides what you already said? I think, just for them to listen, because I think there is so much to unpack. And as you said, there is so much they don't know. And maybe you want to give a message, about astrology empowering, them as parents. So whatever comes to your mind and whatever you want to share, please just.
I would advise parents, I mean, it sounds like I'm selling my book, and I am a bit, but
Please.
understand the child's Jupiter sign, because that is how the child learns. And the age of 12, the Jupiter return around the age of 11 or 12, is the most important year of a child's life. And of course, I'm not saying, if you got a 12-year-old child and a 8-year-old child, ignore the 8-year-old. I'm not saying that at all. But I am saying, when that child turns 12, it's a great time to take that big family holiday, to go abroad, to learn a new language as a family, to maybe, I don't know, study a new skill. And for parents too, just because you're no longer in school doesn't mean the learning stops. You continue to be on a 12-year cycle as well. If you have a Jupiter return coming up, if you're 36, 48, 24, 60, or whatever, start something new, start a new cycle, start a new, some sort of new course.
Wow.
Um, Jupiter cycles actually have a significant transit every 3 years, so you could break it down even more. But Zeus on the Loose breaks it down even further than that, and it gives ideas for every single year of your life. If you know your Jupiter sign, and there's no excuse not to know your Jupiter sign, because I have the ingresses at the back, and
Oh,
all you
so
got to
you
do is
all the information there.
look up your Jupiter signs, and then I have case studies in here to show you, here's a famous person. I'm looking at their transits. I'm not going into their psychology. I'm just telling you the things that they've done with their life that could be either good, success, or where they've overused their Jupiter, because Jupiter isn't always the good guy.
Right, right.
Jupiter can, be over zealous.
Indulgence and
Indulgent. Jupiter is also significant when a person dies, because death is the ultimate adventure. It's taking a life and going from this earthly plane into the spiritual realm. So, Jupiter isn't always, we call it the great benefit, but it can be, something that we need to rein it in, pull back on our habits, and come to grips with having a little bit more self-discipline.
So in the first book, you introduced us to the cycle, basically, the growing pains, right? This is the book. And
Yeah,
in this
I
second book,
I
go ahead.
focus sorry, I focus more on adolescence and growing pains, because at the time I was only teaching. Sorry, I shouldn't say only, because I was teaching adolescence. So no, it's not only there. I was teaching adolescence, and I was frustrated because, a lot of people have that idea of, oh, they're teenagers, they'll grow out of it, and therefore letting the kids get on into whatever they want to get into without having, you know, more firm guidelines. And then Zeus on the Loose, it's more written. I mean, it's directed at parents to help their children learn, but it's opening up to the whole entire life cycle.
Alex, and lastly, because people may be wondering, do you do readings for parents about their children, or what are you up to, besides the teaching and the academic astrology work and your books?
Mhm.
How can you help us? I mean, you have your school. What else do you do? How can we reach out to you?
So the way I work with families. I do family consultations. So a
Mhm.
parent will occasionally say to me, "Oh, I got a 13-year-old child. They're making my head hurt. Can you do a reading for them?" And it's like, I'll do a reading for you as well.
Mhm.
So I bring the whole family in, because I think it's important that you have the whole picture. What kind of relationship do the parents have? There are many different types of families. There's you can adopt a child. There's stepchildren. There's multi layered families. There's um, single mothers. There's single fathers. There's all sorts of different kinds of families. So my first question is going to be, what kind of family am I working with? Where is the birth placement? Am I working? The majority of people who come to me are first-time parents of 13-year-olds. I keep track of these kind of things.
Wow.
So they want to know, what do I do with my 13-year-old? They're off the rails. I don't know what to do. And of course, the answer is grab a hold of your Saturn and start making some rules. Um, so I want to look at the whole entire family, so I can see where that difficult um, child, as the parents label them. I wouldn't call them a difficult child. I would say the situation as a whole is difficult, but where those difficulties are and what can be done. So I'm not just looking at one person as a problem. I'm looking at the whole entire family as a solution, and how the whole family can work together.
Wow. And lastly, Alex, tell us more. Why celebrities? Why royal? What, I mean, because you were talking children, but suddenly you have this other amazing book about, movies and celebrities, and it's the astrology of famous people and the actors who portray them. And I find it fascinating. I don't know why I don't follow celebrity, but I was like thrilled to see all these cases, and my mind was like, of course. So tell us more why.
Well,
Why celebrities, royalty?
I mean, I think after I wrote Growing Pains, I just wanted to kind of, I was calling Mirror Mirror my palette cleanser. I just needed to have a little bit of a step away from
Oh,
astrology and education, because also the pandemic, it's my pandemic
right.
baby as well. And so I
Ah,
wasn't teaching. And so I thought, okay, well, I have been collecting case studies, the synastry between famous people and the actors who portrayed them, and the transits of when the movie was released. I had a few of these case studies together, maybe 20. And I just thought, okay, well, during the pandemic, I'm going to finish this book. And so I started off, I had nearly 200 case studies, 200 biopics about real life people. And me and my publisher pared it down to just over 100. And like I say, it was my pandemic baby. It just helped me, um, it kept my mind occupied while I wasn't teaching.
It's amazing. And also I mean, in the conference, you talk about the royal family and Algol. I mean, it's like we say in Spanish, you are a box full of different chocolates or something. I don't know what the say in English is, but so I'm really happy that we had this opportunity to chat. Alex, tell us more about what do you have coming besides your book? Any classes, conferences, talks? What's up with you so people can follow you on Instagram and see where you're gonna be, or just tell us a little bit more.
Okay, so I just got an invitation to speak in South Africa, um, but online. I might go down to South Africa. We'll see, because it's my Saturn return. So I'm thinking for my 60th birthday, I might do a little tour around the world. But we'll see. I'm still working on that. I'm going to I speak at a few local British astrology local groups. Um, I am going to speak online for the Brighton Astrology group 2 weeks from today, actually.
Hmm.
I'll be speaking about Zeus on the Loose. My book launch is the 13th of August. I'll be starting my new classes. My school is called Rohini Academy of Astrology, learning how to read children's charts ethically and looking at child safeguarding. And those classes start in July. So if you want to take some classes, it's not just about me chatting at you, it's looking at charts and getting feedback and you getting involved in these classes. So those start up again in July. From the Steve Judd conference, I actually got a full class of people wanting to do the reading children's charts.
So,
So
so
that
you mean
was
that they will be online too, if people want to
it's
register?
on it'll be online. Maybe
Great.
one day I can do an in-person event, but at the moment we're looking online. So I have people from all over the world.
Yeah.
I have people, I have South Africans, I have a couple Australians and some Canadians and Americans as well. So, it doesn't work to travel
Right.
around, but I might do it as my 60th birthday approaches. I might work something out, but we'll see. We'll see.
That would be great. I will leave all her details below in the description of the Instagram reel or YouTube. So I will leave the information about her social media accounts, the school, and her bio. So if you want to check her out and follow her work, Alex, it's been really a pleasure. Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much for being
Thank you.
here and for being the experiment in this new podcast. So hope to see you soon. Good luck. Have a great solar return, and let's keep in touch.
Thank you
So
very
thank
much.
you.